Hello and welcome to this video, which is probably going to be a bit longer than usual, as I didn't do a week one playoffs recap for EMEA. So we're sort of just going to go through the entirety of EMEA's Stage 1 playoffs and just talk about each games as we go on. Um, so let's just get right into it. Let's start with BBL Navi, where I feel like Navi sort of maybe fumbled the video a bit. Uh, like they really didn't have any reason to be confident in either of their Lotus or Fracture. Um, uh, and there wasn't really anything like that told us that BBL was particularly weak on any of them. Like BBL looked solid on both, and Navi had looked pretty bad on both. And like I get that they wanted to ban Pearl because Pearl is a pretty good map for BBL, but even then, even Pearl and Haven and Icebox, like maps that they could have picked because BBL banned Split, um, were all maps where Navi had played reasonably well at before, and still they end up picking Fracture, which is a map they literally never won on. Like, I would probably have expected Navi to pick into this Icebox to BBL banned here, considering they looked confident on it before. Like, they looked better on it. Like, they actually beat, like, Vitality on it the week prior. And it's a map where BBL hadn't really shown a lot, and what they had shown wasn't that great. Um, like BBL had played it 3 times. Sure, they won it twice and lost it once, but the one time they lost it pretty badly to KC, and then the other 2 times they didn't look fully comfortable on it. Although they did win, it wasn't like the cleanest affair. Now going into the FNATIC foot game, um, I do think this is another game where I do not understand Foot's way of reasoning whatsoever. First to ban Icebox, which although Fnatic, I would say at this point we probably expect Icebox to be Fnatic like one of their best maps. Um, and Fnatic will obviously also ban Pearl, considering they're pretty much just banned it every single time. And although I do understand that Foot likes Lotus, them banning Fracture, that was sure a good map and would arguably be one of their better maps for now. Given Fnatic the choice between Ascent, a map where Foot looked good, and Haven, one of their best maps, pretty much meant that at this point in time, Fnatic pretty much had Lotus. They had Lotus Split Haven, which is pretty much Fnatic's 3 best maps at the time. I would say at this point, I would argue it's probably Split Fracture and then Icebox, which is kind of funny enough. But still, their Lotus is one of the best in the world, and their Haven is still like a super strong map for them. It's just that I haven't played it a lot lately, just due to them maybe losing some confidence in it after their loss to Team Heretics. But yeah, overall, I don't really know what we're thinking with that veto. Not gonna lie. Then going into Navi versus KC, I do think KC completely shot the bed once again with the veto. I think pretty much all of the first 3 games were probably decided on vetoes. Like, not only did KC pick Icebox, which was pretty predictable, and then they did end up winning it, which was probably like the good part of their veto. But after that point, it just becomes worse and worse because they banned Fracture, which sure KC has not won a game on. They were 0-1 on that map, but Navi are 0-2. So first off, they ban Fracture. And then Navi is gonna ban Pearl, which is fair enough. It was either Pearl or Icebox, and Casey was probably gonna pick the other. And because KC bans Fracture, Navi gets to pick Split, which is arguably one of their best maps, if not their best map. And then you then proceed to ban Lotus, which once again is a map Na'Vi has never won on. It's a map where Na'Vi, so pretty much the two maps where Na'Vi had a 0% win rate on, KC banned it for Na'Vi. Like, KC banned both the maps that Na'Vi had never won a game on, and then floated two maps where they had never won a game. And guess what? Na'Vi picks those two maps, Split and Ascent. Ascent and Split was the two maps which KC floated and then never had a win on. It just also so happens that Split also is Na'Vi's best map. And guess what? Na'Vi ends up winning both Split and Ascent, the two maps where KC had not won a single game on so far. And that's how they lose the game. It's actually like a genuinely terrible veto from KC. And I don't really know what they were thinking. Now, going into FUT Team Vitality, this is probably going to be one of the shorter ones. Because honestly, Vitality is just looking lost, man. I mean, first they show off a fracture, which looked kind of half-cooked. I mean, attack was fine, I guess. Considering they started off down 4-1, like, they kind of came back and made it a 6-6 half, and it looked kind of decent. And then they just literally could not defend to save their life. And then ended up losing 13-7. But even then, like, I wouldn't have minded them losing this game if they got to have a good rest of their game. But then they go on to Split, and they end up changing their comp up for no apparent reason, as they had literally won this map both the times they had played it in Stage 1 so far. And it just ends up not looking good at all. And yeah, they lose 13-6 and just looks absolutely horrendous. Like, they just did not look up to speed at all. And even, like, the veto wasn't much to talk about, but even if it would have been, like, Vitality just did not look good. Now, going into the next game, another one which there isn't much really to talk about is Team Heretics BBL. I do think after this game, I was a bit worried for Team Heretics, not particularly because they looked terrible, but they didn't look as comfortable as they had in the past. But also, I shouldn't take much away from BBL because I do think BBL had a really good game. But yeah, overall, obviously Team Heretics still won 2-0, but BBL managed to keep like the competition high on both maps. I mean, Team Heretics got a 9-3 first half on Ascent, and then sure they ended up winning it, but BBL kept it pretty close by the end, only losing 13-10, and then Icebox happens, and it looks like Team Heretics should be winning, and then BBL sort of comes back, and well, it's a fake comeback. It's still like BBL looked kind of good on both maps, and I actually had some pretty high expectations after this game on BBL. And this also gave me more hope that if FNATIC went past Team Liquid, that they could actually beat Team Heretics. And going into the FNATIC Team Liquid game, holy shit, this game was absolutely incredible. I think the veto was pretty good for both teams. I don't think any team really won in the veto on its own. I mean, FNATIC, this was probably the one thing that was probably a bit bad, was Team Liquid picking Split into FNATIC. Now, once again, it's a bit difficult to say that as well, considering Team Liquid before playoffs looked like they had one of the best splits in the world. And sure, so did FNATIC. But it wasn't like Split was FNATIC's absolutely 100% best map at that time. And now I think it is. But at this time, it wasn't really, so I could still understand why they did this. And then I will say FNATIC's Icebox did look pretty shaky here the first time, but it also kind of just felt like Chronicle wasn't fully used to the get-go. Alpha Year wasn't really up to speed with like how his role worked in this comp. And but you could see like the potential, right? With like how insane Kayak looked. Crashy still looks really solid on the tail, and like you know how good Boaster's calling is on this map, and while it did look a bit shaky, I had my trust that this comp would like grow over time, and so it did. And then obviously Fracture happened, and oh my god, what a fucking map this was! Holy shit! Fnatic obviously ended up winning in overtime in a pretty wild fashion that I feel like, as we're gonna talk about later, actually, like this map probably affected Team Liquid even coming into the game after this. Um, but yeah, overall, what a fucking game this was. I mean, both teams looked really good. Um, and yeah, they just looked, it was an insane game overall. Then going into Team Liquid Na'Vi, which was the next game. And honestly, like on Icebox, although Na'Vi ends up winning it, I feel like just watching this game, especially this first half, Team Liquid just looked shook up. Like they genuinely did. And after Icebox happened, it felt like Happy maybe had a talk with the team, or not Happy, that's Navi's coach, Lothar, or someone had a talk with the team, and it just felt like they just looked, and then after that point, it just kind of worked, and it didn't really look uncomfortable at any point. I mean, they got a 9-3 attack half on split, won 13-4, and then on Ascent, I mean, they got 6 on attack against a double Senti while they're playing double Senti themselves, and then just diffed them with the double Senti. So, yeah, overall, I think Team Liquid still had a pretty comfortable game here, although it was a bit shaky on Icebox. I don't think that was because their Icebox was bad per se. I just think Team Liquid in general looked shaky that first map. And it almost looked like they still had like some nerves from yesterday's game and maybe some confidence issues. Now BBL Foot is a game you look at it 2-1 and you're like, holy shit, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it's the Turkish Derby, it should be close. But honestly, it wasn't as close as it looked. Um, as I do feel like after Haven, you kind of probably thought that it would be the case that it would be like that close, considering how insane of a map this was and how close it did end up being going to OT and everything. But pretty much after that point, I mean, split happened, and BBL just literally had like the full on read on how Foot wanted to play their split. And it didn't look particularly close. Then Ascent happened, and I do think BBL overall was just the better team on Ascent and looked in control for most of it. Um, and that actually gave me pretty high hopes for them coming to the lower round 3 game. But first, we're going to talk about the upper final, Team Heretics versus FNATIC, where Team Heretics ends up losing 2-0. And honestly, at this point, like Fracture for FNATIC were just improving with every single game they played, and it looked absolutely. And this was when I feel like, saw the final form of it, and it looked really, really good. And then it's kind of insane, actually, how much their Icebox improved over the day. Like, although Chronicle didn't perform amazingly, he looked so much more comfortable. Same with Alpha here, I mean. And then obviously Kayak and Crashies both still looked great, and Boaster also had a solid game. And I just think overall, like the calling, everything just looked so much better, and it felt like FNATIC was more in line and more just like comfortable with the comp, and it was kind of dominant, to be honest. Um, Now it was a bit weird for me, at least personally, that Team Heretics didn't end up picking into the Haven, um, but instead pick into the Icebox. But maybe they saw something in the Icebox from the game against Team Liquid and was like, all right, let's try to exploit this. And then Fnatic ended up kind of just not really having those issues, and Team Heretics got kind of fucked by that. Now going into the Team Liquid BBL game, I mean, crazy comeback, not gonna lie, from Team Liquid map one. Right, at this point, like when it was 8-4 BBL, like although like BBL's comp is attack sided, right? I just thought honestly, like with this double Senti, that like okay, so BBL just won map one pretty convincingly. But then, I mean, I don't know what really happened, but BBL just kind of crumbled and Team Liquid ended up winning the map 13-11. And I mean, then Split happened and they had and honestly, like the double Senti Sage deadlock, like the anti they had for this comp just looked really, really fucking good. And Team Liquid just genuinely couldn't catch a break on attack. And BBL ended up winning because of it. Now, then Fracture happened, and it felt kind of like Team Liquid was like, all right, you guys had some nice ideas on Split, to anti our comp and everything, but let's just show you who we are and just like get a 9-3 attack half and then just kind of destroy them. And that was more the Team Liquid we were hoping to see. Now, going into the lower final against Team Heretics, I feel like here was almost the opposite of that, where it felt like Nats wasn't really like playing that well at all. Same with Kiko and Camo, who I feel like were their three best players for like this entire split, and they all went like almost double negative. I think Nats even did. Um, and I mean Haven, I don't think ever would have been like close ever, but I hope Team Liquid could at least like bring more of a fight to it. Then Ascent, I mean, look, Team Liquid, this was probably the one map where Team Liquid looked the most comfortable. I mean, it was their own map pick after all. But I do think this double duelist like idea that Team Heretics has on this map is really interesting and actually like looks like actually a pretty like solid way to counter this double Senti comp. And I feel like it's looking better and better with every single time I'm seeing it. And it's a really interesting way to play the map, and I really enjoyed like how they were playing this game. And then I mean, Icebox happens, and I feel like this Icebox kind of bonafide for me, like how insanely much Fnatic improved their Icebox. Like, sure, Wood went plus 20 and went absolutely fucking crazy, but overall, I just think you watched this and there was just a tier gap. Like, there was just a straight up tier gap. Um, and that's something I feel like we saw with Fnatic's Icebox here, and we didn't really see that the first time. And going into the grand finals, I mean, although the veto looked a bit scuffed, I did think that like Team Heretics overall maybe butchered it a bit, considering I do think these are the two maps where they have like the highest chance to actually deal some damage. I think Icebox was a bit of a risky one, and it felt like after Fnatic got that double ban right, which was pretty huge for them as it was, as either if they decided to not to float their permaban or not or float Haven, that would pretty much have been a free map for them either way. But yeah, then I mean, and they probably wouldn't have had split then either as well. But yeah, after that point, I mean, picking into Icebox just seemed kind of throw because it felt like out of these five maps, these are probably the maps that Fnatic has looked the most comfortable on before this game. So it just felt a bit odd. I mean, last time out, these were the two maps they played. It was split Icebox, and Team Heretics got absolutely destroyed. And once again, the same thing happened. Or no, it was Fracture Icebox, right? I'm pretty sure. Yeah, but yeah, their split had looked insane before as well. So it just didn't really make that much sense to me. But yeah, that two map ban obviously I feel like was also a pretty big difference maker. That combined with a pretty poor veto from Team Heretics, I feel like made this game look a lot more dominant for Fnatic than it actually was. I mean, Kayak went plus 40, which is absolutely ludicrous. But overall, I do think although this game looked pretty dominant, like with the scoreline and everything, I don't think Fnatic are that much better than Team Heretics that this makes it look. Because I do think, obviously, this is their permaban, so we can kind of just leave that out. But Haven, Team Heretics are better on. I do think their Ascent has probably looked better. Lotus is like maybe a bit of a 50-50, but I still think, considering the last result, you would still argue that Team Heretics are better on that map. And then I'd say Fnatic are probably better on these three. So I would say it's pretty 50-50 in terms of like maps for these teams. And I do think, and although like, as I said, the only map that I'm confident on, that I'm not so confident on, is probably Lotus, and that's why I would give the edge to Fnatic. But honestly, with Fracture going out and Sunset coming back in, I would say that kind of equalizes, because I feel like Fnatic has never looked fully comfortable on Sunset. Well, Team Heretics obviously, like, that's like their map, and it's coming back into the pool. And Fnatic's Fracture was one of the best maps in their pool. So it's going to be interesting to see at Toronto which team is going to be better. As I do think both of these teams are looking like pretty, like, like good favorites coming into the event. But I do think Team Heretics in the meta coming into Toronto might be a bit better, but it's really difficult to say considering how good Fnatic has looked. They might be able to even adapt. Like I also feel like in general, both these teams haven't been playing much Teo, although Crashes has been starting to feel pretty comfy on it. I do think both these teams won't really be affected by that too much, but it's going to be really interesting. Like, it really will be. And I do think overall, like, this is going to be really close between these two teams in the new meta. But yeah, that was the recap of EMEA playoffs stage 1. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please like, subscribe, comment. I don't know, just engage with it as much as you want. And I'll see you in the next one.